Welcome back, beautiful souls, to the Thank Goddess podcast. My name is Danny, and here we explore topics including spirituality, awakening divine feminine energy, and remembering who we truly are at a soul level. Today we're going to be continuing last episode's conversation, which was on the 7 Hermetic Principles, which are discussed in the Kabbalion, which is a book that I have here. And today I'm going to kind of pick up where I left off last episode. So if you haven't listened to part 1 of this episode, I highly encourage that you go back and listen to that episode before listening to this one, because I'm not going to go over what was discussed in that episode, and all 7 Hermetic Principles basically build upon one another. So it's essential to understand the first 3 principles before diving into the 4 that I'm going to discuss in today's episode. So last week, just to give a quick recap, we discussed the law of mentalism, which suggests that the universe is mind and that the universe is created mentally. And when we talk about the mind, we're really referring to consciousness. The second Hermetic principle is the law of correspondence, which suggests that as above, so below, that everything in existence is governed by the same laws. And we also discussed the law of vibration, which suggests that everything is in motion and nothing is stagnant, including us. So we are actually vibrating at a certain degree, and that is dictating what kind of situations or people that we are attracting into our environment. The good news is that we can shift our vibration, and we are able to raise our vibration or lower our vibration depending on our state of consciousness. So that was what was discussed in the previous episode, and this episode we are going to be diving into the last 4 Hermetic principles, which are the law of polarity, the law of rhythm, the law of cause and effect, and the law of gender. These are timeless spiritual laws that govern everything in existence. So understanding these laws is paramount to really becoming a master of your reality and creating the life that you truly deserve, and that from a soul perspective, you know is truly possible. So I really find that these laws, when we're learning these laws, it's not so much a learning, but more so a remembrance, because there's something deep within us, this deep, wise essence that lives within all of us, that knows that this is truth in what is spoken about in the Kabbalion. And the more we can align with these laws to, as I discussed in last week's episode, most of us have been conditioned to play checkers when the game of life is chess. So these laws really help you to play chess and to win at life by aligning with these laws that govern everything in existence. The first law that I'm going to discuss is the law of polarity. And the law of polarity suggests that everything is dual. Everything has poles, everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. So essentially what this law is suggesting is that everything in the universe contains 2 poles. Okay, so it really has to do with that yin and yang symbol, where you see the yin is the black, the dark, the feminine energy, and the yang is the white, the masculine energy, and both coexist together. Both are one, even though they appear to be opposites, like white and black appears to be opposite. But what this law of polarity states is that both polarities are one. And to truly understand one thing, we need to understand its opposite. So to give you a tangible example, in order for us to know what hot is, we must understand what cold is. If I've never experienced cold weather, how would I know what hot weather was? Like, it's only by contrast that we are able to know what something is, right? And also this law suggests that there is no absolute hot or absolute cold. So there's not actually one temperature that determines what is hot and what is cold, because what is hot to one person might be cold to another person, okay? So it's all subjective. So essentially, when we talk about hot and cold, we're talking about 2 opposites of the one thing. Okay, we're talking about temperature. Temperature is 1. It's 1 unit, and the degree of that temperature determines what we classify as hot or cold. And we can change, and this is really important, that we can change a degree, such as temperature, so we can actually change hot into cold by cooling it down, right? Or if we want to go the other spectrum, if we wanted to make cool or cold hot, we can warm it up. We can apply heat to that coldness. So we're able to change the degree in which something resides in. So what's really fundamental to understand here is where one exists, the other must exist. By the law of polarity, if there is hot, there must be cool. Now, to take this into more of a personal understanding, we can apply this to our emotions or to our state of being. For instance, this law of polarity suggests that love and the opposite of love, which we often assume is hate, are one. Where we could look at courage and fear, we think of courage as the opposite of fear, they are actually one. And so this is where the Hermeticists bring in this idea of mental transmutation, where we are able to shift our state of being to that of the opposite polarity using our will, using our perception, using our consciousness. We can shift the degree in which we are resonating at. So for example, if I'm feeling fear, if I'm afraid to do something, right? Say I have to give a talk in front of my colleagues. I have to give a presentation at work in front of my colleagues and I'm feeling very afraid. The fact that I'm feeling fear suggests that because of the law of polarity, that level of fear can be transmuted into courage, because courage must exist if there is fear residing within me. And so if I am to apply mental transmutation to the fear that I'm feeling within me, then I'm able to transmute that state into courage, moving the scale degree by degree. And maybe that doesn't happen overnight. Maybe it's not that I wake up and I'm like, yeah, I feel so courageous, I'm going to smash this presentation that I have to give at work. But I think it's very, very helpful to know that if I feel afraid of this, I also possess the courage to overcome this. And perhaps just knowing that can give me a sense of courage when I give that presentation. Or what can also happen is that courage can build, okay? And that's often the way that it goes, is that in order for us to move from one degree to another, we have to take actions to change our vibration, right? So for example, if I'm to give that presentation and say, you know, I push past the fear and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to do it anyway, feel the fear and do it anyway. And I give my presentation, then maybe after that presentation, say it goes well and I receive good feedback from my colleagues, from my boss, then maybe in future I have a little bit more courage than I felt previously to giving that presentation. And slowly, the more presentations that I give, the more I build upon that courage. But the fact of the matter is that where there is one state, there has to be, by the law of polarity, the other state. So again, if I am in a state of fear, there has to be, by that law of polarity, there has to be courage within me, that same level of courage, and that can be accessed whenever we want. And we just have to use our willpower and that observer awareness that I spoke about in our previous episode, the consciousness, the I am presence, the awareness, the person playing the video game. The more we're able to reside in that state, the more we're able to rise above the little self or the ego self, the more we're able to choose love over fear or courage over fear. We're able to trust that if I'm feeling this sense of fear, there has to be courage within me that can overcome this. It's just law. This is just fact. It's not something that I'm making up out of thin air. It has to be, because this is the law. What's also notable about this law of polarity is that it also suggests that spirit and matter, two things that we kind of in our society regard as two separate things, they are actually one, you know. And so everything that we think is black and white, everything we think is separate, is actually unified when we apply the law of polarity. And it's really empowering, I believe, to know that we can transmute anything from one pole to the other. So that's essentially the law of polarity. So principle number 5 is the law of rhythm. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. So this is the law of rhythm, and it really ties into the law of polarity, which is why I said that all the laws kind of build upon one another. Because in the previous law, we understood that everything exists on a spectrum between two poles, okay? So hot and cold are one, essentially. Now the law of rhythm goes a step further, and it suggests that everything in the universe is moving in cycles, ebbing and flowing. Just like our breath, we have the in-breath and the out-breath. So everything in the universe is operating with this ebb and flow, this in-breath and out-breath, this expansion and contraction. And this expansion and contraction, this ebbing and flowing, is moving between the two poles. So that's why we see with the seasons that we have summer, right? So the pendulum will swing to the hot. In the summer, we have the peak of summer, and then the pendulum will slowly begin to move towards the cold, to the winter time. And so we have the seasons, we have autumn, right, before we hit winter, and then we hit that extreme cold, and then we go back, the pendulum will shift back the other way to the summer. We have spring, and then we go to summer, and once it hits the extreme hot, we go the other way. And so everything in nature is moving in this cycle. We see the moon ebbing and flowing every month. We have a new moon, which ebbs and flows into the full moon, and then back again. We have day and night, the sun rises and falls. So everything is moving backwards and forwards. So the law of rhythm in the Kabbalion, they state that this principle manifests in the creation and destruction of worlds, in the rise and fall of nations, in the life history of all things, and finally in the mental states of man. So this is really important when they say in the mental states of man. So we discussed how the law of rhythm applies to nature, and we see that with the seasons, with the moon, with the tide. And so the law of rhythm also relates to our emotional states. I think we've all had days where our emotions have swung from side to side. Maybe we're feeling really happy at one moment, and then we're stuck in traffic and we go the other way. We get really irritated and angry, and then maybe we see one of our loved ones or one of our friends, and then our mood swings the other way. And then we get a text message that says that, that our plans for the weekend that we're really looking forward to is being cancelled, and then we swing the other way. And so we can go on this emotional roller coaster if we're not really conscious of our emotional state. And the Hermetic Principles are all about becoming a master of your mind, becoming a master of your reality. Okay, so this is really important to understand how the law of rhythm applies to our emotions. So in the Kabbalion, they talk about that there's two planes of consciousness, the lower consciousness, the lower plane, and the higher plane. And that the law of rhythm really applies to the lower plane of consciousness. So the higher plane would be what we discussed in our previous episode when we spoke about how are you identifying with the observer, with the awareness, the person playing the video game, or are you identifying with the avatar or the character in the video game? Because that would suggest the lower consciousness. The lower consciousness is when you're just at the effect of life. Like I was giving an example before. Say you're stuck in traffic, you can't do anything about that traffic. You can't change the flow of the traffic, but you can choose what mood you're going to exist in as you sit in that traffic. You don't need to succumb to your environment and get angry and start, raging at everyone on the streets. You can say, no, I choose to sit in peace. Right? I choose to maintain a level of calm in this situation. We all have choice in how we respond to life. And having this awareness is how we rise above the law of rhythm, because in the Kabbalion it states that the law of rhythm only applies to the lower plane of consciousness. So it says that by living or existing in the higher plane of consciousness, we are able to apply the law of neutralization. So the law of neutralization goes back to what I was saying about sitting in traffic. It goes back to you being the awareness, not at the effect of life, at the effect of traffic, which you can't control, but you can choose to be in peace in that situation. You can choose not to lose your cool in that situation. You can choose peace in any moment. Believe it or not, you have the power to choose your state of being in any given moment. Now, this is not something easy to achieve. It takes mastery, self-mastery. It takes, really applying these teachings in every day, in every circumstance as best as we can, and really embarking on a spiritual journey to get to that level. But it's possible. It's truly possible to become a master of your response to life, how you perceive life. And you have the power to exist in peace in all situations. And if you are able to neutralize yourself and just stay in that level of peace that you desire or that you choose, then you are not victim to the ebbing and flowing of the law of rhythm. So I've got my pendulum here, and this kind of explains the law of rhythm. So when the pendulum swings one way, it has to swing the other way. But if we are to rise to that higher level of consciousness, to that higher plane where we are the observer of our reality, the pendulum might still be swinging, but it's at a much less state. It's more neutral. And that's ultimately what we want, because if the pendulum is swinging like this, it's going to be very disturbing, right? To have that inner peace and inner harmony. However, if we're able to neutralize that pendulum, so it's only swinging ever so slightly, just rocking back and forth, it's much more easier to maintain a level of peace from that state. So it says in the Kybalion that the Hermetic masters learn to polarize themselves at a desired pole. So for example, if I desire to exist in a state of peace, then as a Hermetic master, I can learn to polarize myself to that level. So how do I do that? By using my willpower to exist in that state. Like I said, if you're stuck in traffic, if you're having a fight with someone, knowing that by you reacting to that situation, the pendulum will swing one way, which is going to create this back and forth motion with your emotions, with your mental state. Whereas if you stand strong, if you stand firm in, no, I will not let this disturb my peace. No, I will not let this disturb my day. I choose to exist in peace no matter what. If you can stand tall in that truth and not allow that strong ebb and flow of emotions to take place, you are able to polarize yourself to that pole of peace, which ultimately, if you are able to stay at that desired level for a long period of time, then you are able to attract more situations, people, events that resonate at that level, because that's going to dictate your state of being, which we spoke about in the law of vibration, which was principle number 3. So everything is in motion and everything is vibrating. And this has a lot to do, if you are able to become a master of the law of rhythm, you are able to neutralize yourself, to polarize yourself to a state of being that you desire to exist at. Then you have more control as to what experiences life will bring you. Because if you're in that chaotic state of, just moving with life, being at the effect of life, getting angry, losing your cool, disturbing your peace, just by anything that comes in your day. We can't control anything in our environment, right? So some people are living like that. They are literally at the effect of everything that comes their way. They're stuck in traffic, they get upset. They get an email, they get upset. They're stressed at work. It's like all of these things building on each other. It's very hard to come back to this neutralized state, this level of peace that I think all of us truly seek at the end of the day. It's hard to maintain that level of being if we're always being swayed by life. Another thing that's really important to note about this law of rhythm is that there is such thing as a law of compensation, which this relates to, which suggests that the degree to which you feel one polarity also means that you have the potential, or you will at some point experience the opposite of that degree. So for example, if pain and pleasure sit on the same scale, the more pain one feels by the law of rhythm, the pendulum must swing to the opposite end of the spectrum, which suggests that that level of pain will eventually be experienced at the same level or correspondence of pleasure. In the Kabbalion, they state that the man who enjoys keenly is subject to keen suffering, while he who feels little pain is capable of feeling but little joy. So this ultimately suggests that everything is in motion, so that nothing is stagnant in life. So any experience that we might be having, which is painful, say we have a chronic illness, by the law of rhythm, the pendulum must swing the other way to the other spectrum of pleasure. It has to be. This is just law. Now, the Kabbalion also talks about how life is continuous. So it does suggest there is reincarnation, and it does suggest that the pendulum can take lifetimes to swing from one pole to the other. We can also see that on a global stage, we can see that the unfolding of a lot of corruption in the world. We see war-torn countries. We see a lot of things that I think so many of us are like, why is this happening? The good news is that this too shall pass, because the law of rhythm says that if we're going one way towards destruction of the environment, of war, of hate, if we're going all the way up here, the pendulum must swing to the other way, right? So we do have to at some point turn the pendulum around, if it hasn't already turned around, and shift to a world where there is love, where there is harmony between us and the environment, where there is no corruption and there is honesty and truth built in all of our systems. So this law of rhythm is always playing out. It can be across multiple lifetimes, but it does suggest that everything is ebbing and flowing, and we have the potential to rise above our circumstances and to neutralize ourselves in a desired state of being. So the pendulum isn't swinging too far one way and too far the other way, and we are able to stay in that neutralized state as best as possible. The sixth principle is the law of cause and effect, and I love this one because I think this is so fundamental to understand. It's really, really such an important law, which I don't think enough people truly understand. And once you really grasp this concept of cause and effect, which is also the law of karma, it really can be likened to karma, and we'll discuss kind of what that is, because I think karma gets a bad rap and people don't really understand what karma is. So this is a way to understand karma, the law of cause and effect. So in the Kabbalion, it says that every cause has its effect, every effect has its cause, everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for law, not recognized. There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law. And so when we talk about the law of cause and effect, what's really important to understand is that it suggests that nothing happens by chance. So anything that we label as chance is actually causation that we don't understand. So there must be a cause to every effect. The two work hand in hand, and nothing is just random or by chance in this universe. We often think when we roll a dice that, it's chance that the dice will land on a particular number. But if we're to apply the law of cause and effect to rolling that dice, we understand that the number that the dice rolls on is really going to depend on how forcefully the person rolls the dice, right? Because they could just, drop the dice onto the table. They can give it a very strong roll and then it rolls off the table and onto the floor. We don't know how that person is going to roll the dice. We also don't know the condition of the table, or are they rolling it on the floor or carpet? That's going to dictate how the dice rolls. So there's all these factors that we don't often think about that go into the cause of the effect, which is the number that the dice rolls. There's actually a cause behind the number that we think of as chance. So this analogy of the dice also applies to us, to our thoughts, to our words, to our actions, to our emotions. All of this causes an effect in our reality. okay? Everything we do and everything we are influences our future reality. And so that's essentially what karma is. It's not, we often think of karma as, oh, you cheat on me, karma's gonna get you, you're gonna have bad karma, someone's gonna cheat on you. That's not how karma works. Karma is cause and effect. So essentially, it's everything, like I was saying before, everything you do, everything you say, everything you think, everything you feel is the cause of some sort of effect. So for example, to give you a tangible example, if I feel hungry, I might then have the idea to go into the kitchen and then open the fridge and take out some yogurt and eat yogurt, okay? So often, most of us are not even aware that we had the emotion of feeling hungry, we had the idea to look into the fridge, then what was it about, what was it in me that opened the fridge opposed to the pantry or grabbed the yogurt instead of a can of tuna, right? We're not often thinking about all the causations of the effect, right? I hope this is making sense. We're not often analyzing why we do certain things, why we say certain things, why we think certain things, why we feel certain things. And starting to contemplate more of that, to observe. Remember we talked about earlier being the observer, to start observing your thoughts, start observing your actions, what you say, how you feel, what you do, what you think. Having the more awareness you're able to bring to that, the more you are able to essentially become more of the cause of your reality as opposed to the effect, because most people are living in the effect. And they don't even understand why certain things are playing out, that they're creating their reality because they're not aware that they are also the cause. They can shift things, but it takes awareness in order to do that. If we're to think about karma, a lot of us think, well, if I'm a good person, then good things will come back to me. And yes, that is true in nature, but we also have to understand that what one person deems as good and what another person deems as good, and what one person deems as bad and what another person deems as bad, is actually subjective. Good and bad are subjective. It's going to depend on your cultural upbringing. It's going to depend on maybe your religious background, your conditioning. It's going to depend on so many factors, right? And so when it comes to cause and effect or creating good karma for yourself, what's really important is your heart's intention, pure intention. And when I say pure, what I mean is that it hasn't been, when we talk about the word pure, it means it hasn't been contaminated, okay? So it means that we're able to remove ourselves from any conditioning, any I should do this, I think I should do this, all my friends are doing this, society says I should do this, and we're listening to our own inner truth. The more we are able to act and think and respond to life through pure intention, as I said, tuning into our heart and acting, responding, speaking from that place, that's going to dictate the level of harmony we create in our environment, right? Because a lot of people think they're doing good deeds, say they're giving to charity or they're going to church. Maybe they think, well, I go to church, so I'm a good person, so I deserve good karma. But actually, what if there's a part of you in your heart that doesn't want to go to church? You're just going there out of habit or because you think it's the right thing to do. It's what you've always done. It's what you've conditioned for you to do. But what if your heart actually really wants you to, instead of sitting in a church for an hour on Sunday mornings, what if your heart truly just wants to go for a walk in nature and spend time with the trees? Say that's your heart's pure desire. Well, by you going to church to, say, appease your parents, to make your parents happy, or do what you think you should do, or what you've conditioned to have done, then you're actually betraying yourself, because you're not actually listening to your own internal guidance. You're not actually listening to your heart's pure desire. And by doing that, we actually fracture ourselves and we give away our power, because being good is not a moral act. It's more so a vibration that comes from within. So what is right for one person might not be right for the next person. And so it's really important that we allow people the space to do what's right for them, to honor their own decisions and not force others to follow our way, right? But it's also really important for us to do the same, to listen to our own internal guidance system, to listen to our truth, and to be brave enough to speak our truth and to follow our truth, even if it doesn't make sense to others. Because at the end of the day, you don't create good karma or receive any merits for making others happy. You know, you really gain good karma by living in integrity and living from your heart space and living from love, essentially. And what it means to live from love is going to differ from moment to moment, because the only thing that is true is the present moment. We haven't created the future, nor does the past exist. So how we know what is actually most loving to do in every given moment is what feels most expansive in our heart space, what feels most true within our heart space, and listening to that, even when it doesn't make any logical sense, even if it goes against what maybe other people think is right or wrong. And so we don't really know what is good and bad unless we can truly assess what is in someone's heart. And so only you know if you are in alignment or you're out of alignment. No one else can determine that for you, because no one else can see what's truly in your heart. That's something for you to discover as you walk this path and to understand what is your truth. And the more you're able to stand in your truth and to really access more of that observer state, that awareness that we spoke about earlier, that's actually how you start to move into the cause of the effect of your reality. You become a co-creator with life. You become the pure consciousness, the awareness of life. You're no longer the victim of reality. You become the cause of reality. And it starts with you just becoming more aware, like I discussed earlier, like before opening the fridge and just taking, you know, whatever snack you find, becoming aware, oh, I'm feeling hungry, I'm having this thought to open the fridge. The more we're able to slow down and process how we're thinking, how we're going about life, what we're feeling, the more we're able to see it from that objective lens, we're able to start to consciously choose what would be the best action to take, or what would be consciously the best word to speak in this situation. Sometimes it's not speaking. Sometimes that's the magic. Maybe you're in an argument with someone, and usually the ego wants to fight back. It wants to be right. And maybe by you being able to maintain that conscious state of awareness, you're in an argument, someone's attacking you, and you hold your breath and you say, you know what, there's no point me in reacting right now. The best thing for me to do is walk away from this situation. And by you walking away from that situation, not reacting, you know, not being in the effect, trying to change reality from the effect level, but doing so from the consciousness level, that's actually how you change your karma. That's what people don't really understand, is that the way we change karma is not necessarily by acting. Sometimes it is acting. If you're someone who doesn't normally act, maybe sometimes the thing to do is act, but sometimes the way we change karma is by not responding to life. By, like I said, you're in an argument and normally you say something back to that person, and because you're conscious, because you're aware, you have this sudden knowing, oh, the best thing I can do right now is just to walk away. And you walking away can shift the trajectory of your life and future lifetimes to come, because you have aligned with the all, with the creator, and you have shifted reality from the causal level, not at the effect level. So I hope that makes sense. But this is why cause and effect is so important to understand, and that nothing is personal in life. Everything is just cause and effect. The more we become aware of this, the more we step into empowerment and take responsibility for our lives, the more we can shift our reality. The seventh Hermetic principle is the principle of gender. Gender is in everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes. So the law of gender teaches us that the masculine and feminine principles exist in everything in creation. I think this has become more wider knowledge. A lot of people talking about masculine and feminine energy today is that we're not necessarily speaking about physical, biological gender. So if you are a man, you contain both masculine and feminine energies, and women contain both feminine and masculine energies. So everything in creation contains both masculine and feminine energies. And so the biological expression of gender, as people being born female or people being born male, that is just one manifestation of this principle. But it goes much, much deeper than our gender, our biological gender. The purpose of the law of gender is really about creation. It's about producing and generating. And you think about, for a tangible example, you think about a battery. A battery has a positive side and a negative side. So the positive side can be seen as the masculine principle, the negative, not meaning bad, the negative can be seen as the feminine principle. Both are opposite in nature, but you need both in order to generate power within the battery. For the item to work, you need to have both the masculine and feminine poles in order for that generating of power to occur. And if you look at men and women, I mean, this is pretty obvious, but it takes a man and a woman in order to produce a baby. So the same is true of the masculine and feminine energies. Like, we need both principles within ourselves to actually produce anything in life, whether it's an idea. We're here to create. So any project, a business, art, anything that we're producing, in reality, we are applying these two principles, the masculine and feminine energy. In the Kybalion, they refer to it as mental gender, which refer to the masculine and feminine aspects of the mind. So the masculine represents the conscious mind, okay? So it's more active, it's our willpower, it's our expression, it's logic and focus, and it's usually directed outwards. Whereas the feminine aspect of mind represents more of the unconscious or subconscious mind. So it has more to do with receiving impressions, being passive. Intuition, it's the part of us that nurtures ideas and gestates them into life. So both energies are essential. We can't actually have one without the other. And it goes back to the law of polarity, where we discussed the yin and yang symbol, that the masculine energy is represented by the yang and the feminine energy is represented by the yin. And both of them exist within one another. They cannot be separate. They're actually one of the same thing, just polar opposites, I suppose, of the one energy. And we need both in order to create anything new. We need both in order to produce, to create, which is the purpose of life, because life is always unfolding. And if the universe is created mentally, which we discussed in the first principle, then this idea of mental gender comes into play, because that means that our mind, our consciousness, contains a masculine and feminine aspect of it. So the law of gender really talks about how it is essential that we balance these two energies, that we have a balance of the masculine and feminine energy within us. If we don't have balance, if we're leaning more to one side than the other, then that's going to create a lot of disharmony within our reality. For example, if we're too much on our masculine side, then we're too reliant on logic and doing and maybe overexerting ourselves. And we might end up, being too forceful with things. We might not nurture our ideas properly. We might end up being too much in the head where we can't calm down. We're too much in logic, over analysis paralysis. I think a lot of people suffer from that in these days. Anxiety can even be a byproduct of that. And then if we're too much on our feminine side, we can become very passive. We don't take action on things. We dream and we visualize, and we're in that, oh, this would be so wonderful, but we don't actually take a step forward in the world. We don't assert ourselves. We don't assert our needs. Right? So both are important. We need to find balance with both in order for us to create anything that's truly meaningful in our life. It's this sacred dance between doing and being, exerting ourselves and pulling back and resting. So both are needed in order to create anything. And I think, there's so much discussion about this coming up in today's day and age. I see a lot of people speaking about masculine and feminine energy, even if it is a bit surface level in a lot of contexts. At least it's becoming more known. I mean, I think that's how it starts. We start planting the seeds of awareness and it blossoms. So it's really exciting to see that this is becoming more widespread across humanity. And so the law of gender is the final key to understanding how we shape reality from within us. The principles of truth are 7. He who knows these understandingly possesses the magic key before whose touch all the doors of the temple fly open. I love that quote because it really suggests that if you become a master of these 7 principles that we discussed in this episode and my previous episode, then you become a master of reality. You possess the magic key before whose touch all the doors of the temple fly open. And so as we come to the end of discussing these 7 Hermetic principles, I think what I really want to leave you with is that these principles are not just meant to be mental concepts that we just discuss here and we're like, oh yeah, that's a cool idea. No, they're meant to be applied. That's what the Hermeticists were all about. They're about applying these truths to their mental state of being, practicing, becoming more conscious, becoming more aware of how you're going about your day. It's not about just sitting on our meditation cushion and saying, okay, I've done my 10 minutes for the day, now I'll go live the rest of my day. Spirituality truly is happening in the now. It's happening in your everyday, as you go to work, as you eat your dinner, as you go about your daily tasks, sitting in traffic. Every moment of life is a chance for you to apply these 7 Hermetic principles, for you to practice becoming the observer. Life will continually present catalysts towards you, opportunities of growth for you to evolve. We will always be presented with new opportunities for us to apply these 7 Hermetic principles if we are on that path, if we are choosing to do so. We will be given opportunity after opportunity to rise above our current environment or this situation that's presented to us and see it from a higher lens and respond to it as opposed to react to it. To choose peace. I can choose peace instead of this. I can choose to exist in peace. I don't need to get aggravated by this traffic in front of me. Yes, it might take work, but we can get to that state where we have the power. We are not just swayed by external influences. We can actually be the cause of the effect. We can be the ones to instill peace in our environment rather than being swayed by the lack of peace in our environment, if you get what I'm saying. So to summarize, when you understand the law of mentalism, you reclaim the power of your mind. When you understand the law of correspondence, you see the reflection of spirit in all of matter. When you understand the law of polarity, you get to choose what vibration you exist in. When you understand the law of polarity, you get to choose what spectrum of the polarity you want to polarize at. When you understand the law of rhythm, you understand how to transcend that pendulum swing, so it's not swinging so drastically anymore. When you understand the law of cause and effect, or the law of karma, you become the conscious creator of your reality and not the victim of it. And when you understand the law of gender and you bring your inner masculine and inner feminine into harmony, you can create anything you wish with intention and grace. So that's all I'm going to leave you with, beautiful souls. I hope this information landed for you, and if you know anyone that this information would be beneficial, then please share it with them. If you would like to work with me one-on-one, I do offer tarot readings, astrology readings, and Reiki healing. You can check out my website in the links below. And until my next episode, please take care of yourself, and I will see you then.